This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
I'm Jay Mathis, and this is Your Playbook, where we break down the behaviors, attitudes, and techniques top performers use every day to achieve their version of success. I invite you to join me for every episode as I talk with my friends who are leaders from various industries and walks of life, learning about their playbook and what habits, mindsets, and strategies shape their business and personal life. Welcome to Your Playbook. Today, I am really honored to meet with a man I've known since college. He was a friend of my father's. He was a friend of causes that I care about, and he's a friend of mine. And so please welcome to Your Playbook, our friend, Drayton McLane Jr.
Thank you.
Welcome, Drayton.
It's an honor to be here with you today.
Well, it's great to be here.
Friendship goes way back to your father.
It does.
In about the early 1970s, and your dad was one of the finest Christian human beings. He was a great businessman, a go-getter, but he was a good athlete. And I tried to beat him in tennis and racquetball,
Yes, you did.
and several of those, and he would win most of the games.
And as we always say, he doesn't let the customer or the prospect win to make a sale. He does not.
Even if he defeated you very easily, he rubbed it in.
And then he's always real nice to you afterwards.
Yes,
It just enjoyed it.
Remain lifelong friends throughout his life.
Well, he died. It'll be a year next month when he died, a year ago. And you did that video for him, just talking to the folks about him, that friendship. My dad always valued that. And he would come and tell me these stories. I kind of learned about you, high school and college, really, about starting in Cameron and moving to Temple and all you did. Could you give us, because I know your story and people can read things online, but give me a little 2 or 3 minute, just the life of Drayton McLane from Cameron to here. What's that been like?
Well, one of the best things the Lord did for me was I had two of the finest Christian parents. I had two older sisters, and they spent so much time informing our lives, informing it in our Christian values, being involved in our faith, living our faith every day. And they really cultured us and moved us through our childhood years. My mother was a great mentor to me up until I was finishing college and went into business. And then my father was a great mentor, but they all were.
Yeah.
But my mother would have really loved your father. My mother's number one theme, she said, at least 5,000. Do you ever have your mother or father say something to you over and over?
Over and over. Oh, yes.
And that theme was that in our life, our Christian faith is by far, our belief in the Lord Jesus Christ is by far the most important thing in our lives. And said, second is the extended family, not just your immediate family, but all your cousins and aunts and others. Said, we narrow it down too much, but we ought to really care and help them live their lives. But said, number 3 is really going to dictate your life. And that is who you select to be your friends. And our theme was, if you choose people wisely, they will inspire you and lift you up. You choose them poorly, and they'll destroy you.
Pull you down.
Well, I grew up in Cameron, and Cameron then was about 5,000, and my mother had spies all over town when I was a teenager, and I made a few bad choices. And I had to sit by her, and she had to talk about it. Wow. And I thought when I went to Baylor, I'll get away from all this. And I remember I was at Baylor the first as a freshman for about 4 or 5 weeks, and I came home to see my mother and dad. And the first thing she did, she said, I want you to sit right here, and I want you to tell me of 4 or 5 of your new friends, who they are, something about them.
Oh, baby.
She never met any of those, but she really, really was important, and she was emphasizing again. And I remember when my mother was 89, she was in Scott White Hospital. It was the latter part of her life, and I was up visiting her one day, and she was 89, and I was in my late 50s, and she was asking me, now tell me about who some of your new friends.
Who your friends are.
Wow. Yeah, so I told her about Jim Mathis.
I'll be. It's crazy how 18, 19 years old, those 4 or 5 friends, would you say those were the kind that had the positive impact? Those lifted you up. Yeah. What was it about those kind of men back when you were that age that you went back, you got involved in the family business, you began to grow all that? What was it about those people that impacted you? would you say?
They were a well-rounded person. They had an enthusiasm for life. They wanted to achieve something.
Yeah.
But the most important, they had Christian values.
Yeah.
You can be the most successful person in the world, but if your values are not right and how you live your life is not right, it'll soon get away from you.
It'll get away from you. A lot of times we talk to people about behaviors, those habits in your life that just the foundation for things we do. When you think about your life, what would be the top 3 or 4 things that more than anything else you're going to do these day in and day out in your business, in your life, habits, behaviors? What would be those for you?
Well, the most important certainly is the value.
Yeah.
Ethics, the value ethics. And I write down and put in my pocket different ideas all the time. When I get up in the morning and put my clothes on, I always look at this before I put it in my pocket. What are my values? What are my Christian values? And how do I want to live my life? Then I look for people after you see the type of person he is, what's their attitude?
Yeah.
I like to be around them. Your dad had a wonderful, and you have that, your brother, John, certainly has that attitude. You can't put attitude into people. You either have to have it.
Yeah.
And if you're around someone that has a good attitude, even though there was difficulty and immense problems, their attitude will help lift you up and help you work through those issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
For number one,
I like that.
Christians, ethics, ideas, and values. And then number 2, attitude. And number 3, you want to go out and be successful.
Yeah.
You said about your dad. Would he have eased? I was his customer.
Yeah.
Would he have eased up on me to let me win a game of
No way.
No.
No.
If he could beat me 6-0, he would.
He would. He might give you a point here and there, but you know.
But your dad had a good attitude.
He did.
You enjoyed being around him.
Yeah.
Even when he was a better tennis player than you would.
You know about that thing in your pocket. I'm curious, is there anything new on your list recently?
Change it up from time
You change it up. Okay. That's a habit. You've been doing that forever though, right? It's
78 years.
Yeah. And it's the same. You keep it close by,
Yeah, let's see what
scribble on it.
I'm looking right now.
Yeah. What's the latest?
This is a appointment I have tomorrow. This is Mark 12. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. So I rotate different ones to look at from time to time.
It's good.
Get too focused on what we want.
Yeah.
Most people live a life of what they want and what pleases them. And I found you can really expand your life if you focus on other people.
On the right thing. When you were building McLane Company, for instance, it's just right over there. By the way, I was telling earlier the guys a story when you opened up McLane Company, the new building, and Senator Phil Gramm came.
Yeah.
And talk about how you built this thing right in the middle of a cornfield. And I think it continued to be a cornfield, but that was a great accomplishment. How did you, I think people, when they see someone like yourself, who's done a lot of great things, they admire that. But how do you keep that stable, your life in check when everything's growing so fast? You got all these employees, the dynamic things that are going on. Besides, you get up, you check those. Is it as simple as that sometimes? Just keeping your ethics?
It's like a great, great athlete.
Yeah.
It's just like they had the Final Four in basketball. And when those guys stood at midcourt and did that 3-pointer, I thought, how'd they do that? I could do that shoot 40 or 50 times.
And never hit the basket.
Be close.
Yeah.
They got there through training and practice and practice and practice. And then they thought about what they did. In business, I had a mentor throughout my career. It's easy for me. I try to get around people that are smarter than I am.
Okay.
So if you get people smarter than you, or you learn from them. And I had a mentor one time. He lived in Chicago. He was an intellectual. His name was Michael Connor. And he mentored me through McLane Company grew 30% per year or more for 32 consecutive years. We kept moving.
Yeah.
But one day early in it, he said, you're in serious, serious trouble. I said, for what? And he said, 85 to 90% of the people can't deal with success. He said, I don't care whether they're politicians, they're ministers, they're business people, or athletes, or whoever. Most people can't deal with it. He said they start inhaling what people were saying about him, giving him all the accolades
Yep.
and all that. And they began to believe all that stuff. He said, you just need somebody to hit you in the stomach every morning and say, you're not as big a deal as you think.
Exactly.
And he constantly, he said, less than 10 to 15% of the people can really deal with success and who they are. And that really had an impact. And I've watched, as you have, politicians, ministers that get great success.
Yeah.
And they begin to believe in themselves.
That's right.
He just said you need someone. Another, I've been married for 54 years, and you need a wife that says, Buster,
that's right.
Here's the deal.
You're not all that.
Deal. And she told me years ago that when I come home at night and I press the garage door opener, that means I'm no longer in charge.
That's right.
I run this place.
I love it. I love it. 54 years. That's good. You made it that long. That's good.
Michael Connor said, whatever level of success, don't dwell on it.
Right. You got to keep moving. Right. I think the word you say is charge on. I think you've said that over the years. Move forward, charge on. And so that's how you kept that 30% growth year after year after year.
Stay humble, stay focused.
And so now that you got sons in the business, your sons have been around a while, Drayton and Denton. In perspective wise, does any of that change at this season of life, trying to, as they move into now running a lot of things, some of your perception or some of your ways of doing things changed?
As we progress in life.
Yeah.
I remember when I was involved with the Houston Astros, I would talk to players that had been great players. I said, how do you know it's really time to retire? And they all said the very same thing. It's the legs.
It's the legs.
It's the legs.
Yeah, they tell you.
It's not the arm. It's not the mind. It's not the upper body. It's the legs. You can't move as quick as you used to. And it said, you see balls go right by you that a few years ago you would have gotten. And you understand, but it's the legs. And you just don't have the strength. In business, you can go out. I'm 88, and I get to the office about 7:30 every day. I enjoy it, but I can't zip intellectually as fast as I used to.
Okay.
And the walk from the car here takes longer than
it used to.
So you gracefully accept that.
Yeah.
And a good athlete knows when it's time to retire.
Yeah.
And a good business leader will know it's time to share the leadership of others.
So when you think about, and I think all that's so true, it's like the legs, and you're saying sometimes there's other things that would go first in that. When you think about legacy, you had success. We know what that word is all about. But when you hear the word legacy, children, grandchildren, maybe do you have great grandchildren yet?
No.
No great, but you got grandchildren. What would you hope that is said about you by your grandchildren and great-grandchildren one day? What legacy do you want to leave?
That people say he was a person of integrity.
Okay.
His Christian values showed not in what he said, but how he lived his life.
Yeah.
And that he cared about others. Our family has gotten deeply involved in charity of some kind. That's very, very satisfying. Not only to give financially to causes, but to be involved with boards and other things.
Right.
Your dad was a good example. He was involved in a number of different areas. I saw him work. And so that they judge you not just being a businessman. You got to be more than a one-note Charlie.
That's right.
That's right. You're just a great businessman, but your family life suffers or your faith does not come shining through, or you don't want to give back to what you've got. And then it's the other is you got to prepare for the next generation.
Yeah.
Can I tell an interesting story if it takes a minute?
Sure. Tell whatever you want.
Same intellectual. His name was Michael Connor. And we traveled as I was traveling my business. And we were going one day, and he asked me an interesting question. He said, what is the most lasting corporation or lasting organization in the history of the world? I'm too business oriented. And I started talking about GE or IBM or other. I talked about we've done business with a number of Japanese companies and a number of German companies, mentioned by the things. He let me ramble on. And he said, no wonder you're not getting anywhere. You're done. He said, what's the most lasting organization in the history of the world? I missed it. He said, church.
It's church.
He said, the church is 2,000, 3,000 years old, and it's the faith. And he said, the reason it's as strong today as it was 2,000 years ago is that it had a dedicated people who perpetuated that faith.
Yes.
And he said that was their profession. And he said what they saw, said they might be a minister only 35, but he saw his responsibility is to make the next Christians.
Yeah.
These teenagers, these young adults, to make them Christian, that they ultimately would take his place.
Right.
And he said, corporations, the average corporation in America lasts about 25 years. And then they either merge, go out of business, or something happens to them. So they're very fragile. He said, but the church has done it for 2,000 or 3,000 years. And he said, every faith has someone that's dedicated to explain that faith to the next generation.
Yeah.
That's what our pastors call, that's what our rabbis call, it's the priests call, whatever faith, it's called something different. He dedicates himself to prepare that faith for the next generation. He said, you don't do that in your business. You're out here just running around. You need to quit getting so involved in the details of the business. And you need to be involved in preparing the next generation.
The next generation.
Isn't that interesting?
It's so true.
I thought that through.
Well, I heard someone tell that story, and their answer was it was the Catholic Church. But I think he's right to say it's the going on and on. It's so interesting when you say that, because I was talking to a man who was running a division of his company, and I told him, I said, you've got to invest in your people, and that you're going to be a great leader. And he said, well, I really like the technical this, and I like this. He liked all those other things. And I said, well,
that's IBM.
Yeah, I said, you're going to have to invest in the people around you. And I think that's where, perspective-wise, when we're in the trenches building something, sometimes we lose perspective on that. He called you a dummy? Is that what he called you? Dumb?
He said that's why you're not very smart.
Okay, yeah, not very smart.
I can tell you're not very smart.
But isn't it funny how he's pointing out that, but we need those sort of corrections in our life to remember it's about developing our kids for the next generation.
Someone else,
yes,
as he was saying, that has the courage to tell you what you want to hear. Don't tell you, boy, those are good-looking shoes you got on today, and you're maybe the smartest guy I've talked to in a long, long time. You don't need that. Right. You need people that are intellectually challenging you to do it. And he said, a faith has a group of people that are dedicated to perpetuate the faith.
To keep it going over. And that's so when you think about your legacy, you're pouring into your sons, your grandkids, want to move that forward. And not just your family, but it sounds like others as well. And we talk about someone's playbook. We talk about, as you have, there's behaviors that you have to have every day. There's an attitude. You talked about the mindset, integrity, talk about, the ideas that you're always thinking about. But there are techniques that make people successful. If you had to talk to a young man today, let's say a 21-year-old Drayton McLane back in Cameron, if you could go back in time and tell him, hey, here's something, a technique that you need to make sure you really develop in your life. What would you want to hear back then that maybe you didn't hear then?
The number one, we talked about attitude.
That would be the technique. Just
people come into something and they say, well, I don't like this office space. I don't like this. Or, you go meet a new group of people and how later you say, well, I just didn't like that. Just we look at what we don't like in life and what we don't like in people. So attitude is all about, well, how can I make that better?
Yes.
And another mentor told me one time, he said, we get life all wrong. He said, when we're in middle school, we got friends, like we love everybody.
Yeah.
We get in high school, we've narrowed down our friends, the people we like. We get into college and we get even a narrower. We go into business and we really get a small group of people.
Yeah.
He said, basically, we're very prejudiced.
Wow.
And we rule out as we get more
all these other people.
Don't like. He said, you need to eliminate. He said, something I want you to do for me for the next 3 months. And I said, what was that? He said, once a month, I want you to have lunch with somebody you really don't like.
That's a great idea. So
And I
good.
said, what?
Yes.
And he said, every human being has some really good qualities.
Yeah.
Our prejudice, well, we don't like the way he dresses, or we don't like the way he talks, or he doesn't like sports. And we don't. He said, if you really want to be a leader, you've got to learn to get away from prejudice. And people said, you don't have to like the person, but spend time with people.
Yeah.
And he said, expand your network.
That's really good. I had a guy tell me one time, he told me, I think life is like, we're all like Lego pieces. We only have so many places we can connect people. And I remember thinking to myself, that's so limiting. Like, we're not Lego pieces. We're meant to have a lot of connections and, in all different parts of life. And you said something, Drayton, and I hope people hear this. And I'm seeing more and more a return of this where people have mentors, coaches, people to listen to. And sometimes people assume that someone like yourself who's had great success, that they don't have those people. But you've named O'Connor, you've named a couple other people, including your wife, that speak into your life.
Sure.
And it sounds like that continues.
Hang on to them.
And you're willing to listen. If you take some of the good, some not, but that's my impression is what you're saying. You listen to
I'll
them.
use your dad for an example. We all move on in life.
Yeah.
And your dad still had a great friendship with, he went to Texas A&M, that he played racquetball with.
Yeah. Johnny Johnson.
I forget
Don Johnson.
Yep. I never met any of them. But he hung on to them. And I think they had totally different lives, but they had one connection. They played racquetball together and they liked each other.
That's exactly right.
And he hung on with them because I remember he was going somewhere to meet them and play racquetball. But he really wasn't going to play racquetball. He was going to renew that friendship. And
yes, he was.
We've run away from that.
Yeah, we do. And to hang on to that, Don, by the way, he's 90. He lives in College Station, still tries to play a little handball, but they met in college. And he told you this, back in 58, they won the National Collegiate Handball Championship in Chicago. But
they would meet several times a year.
Oh, yeah,
to talk about it.
They would. And Don, I reach out to him once in a while. In fact, last year after Dad had passed away, it was already planned. There was the Johnson Mathis Handball Classic at Texas A&M University. And I got to go down to represent Dad, take a picture with Don. That's a name. To your point, that's a name I've heard my entire life. And so is yours, and a lot of others.
Though, your dad had a good attitude, and he was mixing it all together.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, whether it's handball, work, tennis, family, he could mix all that together.
Saturday week, if you on the 3rd, if you really want to have a good time, I graduated from Yale High School in Cameron in 1954. There were 91 in there.
No kidding.
And we have a class reunion. We started this about 25 years ago. In May of each year, we have a class reunion, and we're going to have one in our home. There were 91 in our class. There's about 17 still alive today.
Really?
There's going to be about 10 of them. And if you come, you could meet some of the most knockout chicks you've ever known. Of course, they're 88, 89.
Yeah, they got a little older. Well, there were some people there that had gone on to do some amazing things. Was it Wayne Fisher?
Wayne Fisher.
He was from Cameron.
Yes, he was. And he went to Baylor Law School, became one of the most prominent lawyers in
That's what I thought.
the state of Texas and the United States.
But that's neat.
Everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere. Athletes
I love it.
everywhere. Just look at the Final Four. That was interesting when they were introducing them, where they were from all over the world.
All over the world. Oh, yeah.
All over the world.
Yeah,
One thing in common. They knew how to hit that.
They did. We need to get some of those guys to come to Baylor. Let's work on that. Get the down the portal. So here's my question for you. If you have that in your pocket, but I always ask people, if you open up kind of the playbook for your day every day, and you just could see one word, if you could look at one word every day, I think I know what it might be, but what would that word be that you want to think forward? Okay.
Change is the most difficult thing in life. To change our routine. I challenge our people for years. Think about from the moment you get out of your bed in the morning until you get to have breakfast. Do you go through the same thing, the same routine every morning? You generally do. And I challenge them in the morning, do it just the opposite. Turn it all around. And people tell me later, couldn't do it. Trust me,
Yeah.
just can't do it. We are so into I drive to Waco a good bit. Sometimes I can't remember going through Troy, or I can't remember going through Bruceville, Eddy. I'm focused on something else.
Right.
We don't really participate in our life like we should of what's really going on. We're off into something else. So refocus.
Yeah.
You got a great life here. We get too enamored and go to the movies or TV and something glamorous, but we're glamorous. And we're doing interesting, fun things every day of our lives. And so get out of your routine, think differently. That's hard to do.
It's very hard to do.
Is to think differently and approach things and try to see what's going on in other people.
Yes.
Why do they act like that? Why do they do that? And what makes them successful?
I love that. And I'm going to remember that I got to find the 2 or 3 people that I don't like as much and go have lunch with them, figure out how they tick. That's good.
Is that why we've had
That's why you're having lunch with them. That's pretty good.
I said that to your dad. He'd say, "Oh, thanks a lot."
Yeah.
Oh, but that's true.
Yeah.
His comment was, we like to be around people that like us and make us feel good.
That's right. And you got to get out of that think differently. And
there are a lot of smart people everywhere.
Yeah. And sometimes, as you said a while ago, sometimes you need a punch in the gut to remind us of humility, remind us we're not all that, and so forth. So this is great. Drayton, thank you so much. This has been a lot to me as someone who's known you so long, and we didn't say this, but you're actually co-chair of my campaign back in 1996.
I can remember that.
Good time doing that.
Thing you were trying to do that. You were getting out of your paradigms and doing something really big. And you should be very proud of that. Your children should be very proud of that. The dad, I tell people it's like jumping off the high diving board and you hadn't seen if there's water.
I'm not sure if there's water. I think that's right. I think my kids are impressed by it. My wife was like, whew, I'm kind of glad you didn't win. So,
but you did that, and your mother and dad were so proud of you. So you impacted a lot of people. We see life is only what we succeed at.
Yes.
I wasn't valedictorian in my graduating class. I did okay, but that didn't bother me. A lot of people said you either win or lose. That's not true.
That's right.
Did you watch the Masters golf tournament?
I did.
Sunday?
Yes.
And the fellow that was from England, Rose?
Yes.
He was so crushed.
I know.
He should have been elated. He was the second best player in the world that day.
And his round was incredible.
And if he had made that life putt, he would have won.
Oh, yeah.
But people get too discouraged too easily.
On just losses instead of counting
Something didn't work out just the way they wanted
right.
to. To heck with it. He got worldwide record and the joy he had, and he was within the putt of being the champion. We take discouragement too seriously.
We do. Someone asked me that question about the one word, and lately that word for me has been resilient. And I look back at my life. I was just telling some friend of mine that when I was 7 years old, this true story, I struck out in T-ball. Now to strike out in T-ball,
and you still remember it.
And I still remember that.
But you shouldn't.
But I remember it in a good way, meaning I was resilient. And I was like, well, I may have struck out in T-ball, but I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. And everything we try, everything we pursue, it forms us, it shapes us, it makes us more resilient.
Discouragements or disappointments shape us, and then how we act the rest of the day.
Yeah. We got to get our mindset like we're just moving forward.
I'll tell you what I learned from baseball players.
Yes.
Jeff Bagwell was one of our best players in the 2000 and is now in the Hall of Fame. And when I first was the team, I would suffer after a loss. Yes. And he said, Drayton, you're not going to make it because we only play 162 games this year. And in less than 24 hours, we're going to be playing again. And he said, you only need to know 2 words to really make it in baseball. I said, great. And this has helped me. I said, what are those 2 words? It's hope and tomorrow.
Hope and tomorrow. I love it. I love it.
Move on.
Move on. That should be the title of your next book, Drayton. Hope and tomorrow. Thank you so much, dear friend. Appreciate you. Wish my dad was here to join us, but what an honor to be able to visit with you.
Thank you.
Thank you
for carrying on your great tradition.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Appreciate you. Your Playbook is powered by Sandler, a global provider of sales and leadership methodology backed by data-driven solutions designed for measurable, continued success. Check out Sandler.com. And a big shout out to Rogue Media Network.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.